I want to talk about polymer clay. I like using polymer clay to do a lot of little small crafts, to do a special gift for someone. Maybe you want to make a pair of earrings and you can't find what you're looking for in the store. These are some things that were made with polymer clay. This one's just a neat little earring. This is just a small little decorative item to stick on something if you're trying to dress up a package, maybe part of the bow on a wrapping job that you're trying to do to make it look nice. They can be Christmas ornaments, they can be charms, a lot of different things. But you can just use polymer clay to make something that you don't find in the store. Maybe something to customize for a person who's looking for something special and you just can't find it. You can find plenty of unicorns and emojis in the store, but maybe something more specific is a little harder to find. These are also some things that were made out of clay, so you can make some realistic looking things. And if you're trying to make a decorative piece that has what looks like candy on there, you don't want to use real candy because it can bring ants and they get sticky and they won't stay good forever. So you can make things that look like this out of polymer clay. So I'll show how to make something simple out of polymer clay. I'll show how to make a little cookie out of clay. And I have some of the tools that I like to use. So this is just a store brand polymer clay. There's Sculpey, there's a Fimo brand. I like this one because it's soft. Thing about polymer clay is if it is a good brand, sometimes the good brands are very hard and crumbly and hard to work with. But it seems that the cheaper brands are not only more affordable, but they're also softer and take less prep time to work with. The only prep time that's really involved with polymer clay is that you have to really work it in your hands to soften it and warm it up before you can use it, or else it will crumble on you. And sometimes that's the look you're going for, but if it's not, then you're going to have to work with it for a long time to make it pliable so you can have a smooth surface that doesn't show cracks and imperfections. There's also a lot of neat little techniques you can use to make indentations and shapes and different textures and styles on your clay. On the pineapple, I needed a little shape that could get me that little star shape inside all of these crisscrosses, and I just used the end of a Phillips screwdriver and just sort of dug it in there to make that indentation, and it gave it a neat little shape and it gave it the look of a pineapple. So it was a really easy thing, but it was a tool that you would have laying around that you'd be able to use to give your polymer clay a special look. So I also have all my clay tools right here. Some of them are official clay tools, the Sculpey brand that you can buy in the store, and some of them are wood tools. Some of them are really just tools that you might use for other things, but they can be used for clay. So something like this, you could even use a toothbrush, but this would just give something a rough texture. This is what I'm going to use on the cookie. I also like to use an X-Acto knife for a lot of things. When I made the football and I had to cut those little stripes to put on there for the stitching, I just used an X-Acto blade to do that. I really like the wood tools for shaping and poking. So something like this that just has a pointy end that you can do different things with. You can even cut your clay to chop off a small piece that you're going to work with, or you could just use that pointy edge to make a line or a mark where you need to stick something. So I really like these. And then there's always just the tools for making a dot or a spot where you need to put something. So for the cookie, I will be using the texture tool, which, like I said, could be a toothbrush. It doesn't have to be some fancy clay tool. And I'm also going to use I guess I'll use my wooden piece to make an indentation where the chocolate chips will go. So when you're working with polymer clay, it picks up every little thing that's on your hands or on your work surface. So first of all, I'm going to move all this out of the way, and I'm going to use some wax paper and just roll that out. I won't bother cutting it or anything. I'm just going to roll it and it'll stay back there. You also want to make sure your hands are fairly clean. If you're using a lighter color clay, then especially make sure you don't have any residue from another type of clay on your hands. If you've been working with polymer clay all day, you want to wash all that off. It'll feel kind of greasy, a little bit kind of gross on your hands, but just wash it really well. But if you're using a darker color, a more neutral color like this is my cookie color, it really doesn't matter. And that's why I'm even using clay that has a little bit of clay on there stuck from other colors. So I've got some blue and purple, but that doesn't matter. I'm just going to work it in. I'm going to smush it around and mix it and knead it until all those colors turn into one. I won't mind too much if some of it is showing. This one's already fairly soft and I haven't worked with it. It's just a good brand, so it's not going to crumble on me. And you can't see every time you fold it over, you can't see it cracking. So you know it's going to be soft and easy to work with. So I'll make this into sort of a thicker shape because I don't want a really thin cookie. I want it to be kind of a chunky cookie. So I'll make it sort of like this, set it on my wax paper. Then I'm going to use the texture tool because no cookie is smooth like this. I'd want to give it a little bit of a rough texture so it looks like dough or bread. I want it to look like it's rough, not a smooth cookie. So I'll set that down and I will use this and just sort of roll over it, pressing into it and making marks. And don't make it go over just once or twice and create grooves because that's going to give it an unnatural look. You want it to be rough, so go different directions. Don't just only go the same direction. Roll it until you get that textured look everywhere. So I'll bring it up close so you can see it has that rough look all over. Kind of looks like ice cream, and it could be done on an ice cream that's made out of polymer clay too. It just gives it a neat look, and it looks very realistic. After that, I'll take the poker tool and I'll just poke little spots wherever I want my chocolate chips to be. Again, don't do it in a pattern because you want it to look natural. You want it to look like it just happened. So don't do crisscrosses and try to map out where they're going. Just do it randomly because that's how chocolate chips would be. So I got little spots where I'm going to put my chocolate chips. I've also got some of this darker color clay, which I keep in a bag so that the same thing that happened to the lighter color doesn't happen to my darker color because remember it had those little pieces of other clay colors on there and I didn't want that to happen to this one. So I'll just pull off really small pieces of this, sort of roll them around in my finger. I'm just pinching off a little piece. That's going to be one of the chocolate chips. Roll it around. It doesn't have to be a perfect ball, and stick it into one of those little spots that you just made. I'm going to do that for every one of these. Okay, so I've got my last one going in there, and it's bigger than I want it to be. I don't want the cookie to be this size. I also want the chocolate chips to look like they naturally went to the edge or wherever they would have fallen if I was just rolling out cookie dough and baking it and not caring about the placement of the chocolate chips. So I'll seal this back up so I can keep my clay in there. Polymer clay is not air dry clay, so you can leave it out in the open and it is okay. You do want to keep it in a climate controlled space, so you don't want it to get too hot because that is what hardens the clay, is heat. You actually have to bake your polymer clay to get it to turn it solid, so it's no longer pliable. So if you were to keep your polymer clay out in the garage and you live in a warm climate, then your garage is going to get hot enough on some days to actually start to bake your clay, and you'll come back to it one day and it will be crumbly and very difficult to work with because it is partially baked. You bake this on 400 degrees, and I like to use a toaster oven. I'll talk about that in a minute. So it won't get nearly hot enough in your garage to actually bake it, but it will get hot enough to sort of ruin it to the point where it's not soft and pliable anymore. So I'll use a cookie cutter. This is a really small one. I'll go right in the center of where I put those chocolate chips, and I'll just give it a cut. Make sure it went all the way down. Pull the extra off. It is okay that I have a little bit of a chocolate chip stuck there because it's all brown. I can just mix it up and use it again. And then poke your cookie out the bottom gently. You don't want to smush it or leave a fingerprint in there. And there is your little chocolate chip cookie made of polymer clay. If you really want to go crazy with it, you can take the texture tool and texture those sides, because of course now we have smooth sides and the texture look on the top. So you can go around and give it a little bit of texture. You could even add in a few more chocolate chips if you'd like. Not necessary. If this was going to be a charm or an earring, it's light enough to be an earring, that would be okay. You'd want to poke a little hole in this before you bake it. So you'd want to use just a wide needle, or you could use one of your, if you do have clay tools, something like this. So you could just poke the hole and make sure it's open wide enough for you to make it into a charm or put a ring or a loop on there. If it's not, and you're just going to hot glue it onto something or stick it onto a package or a tag, then it's good just the way it is. And this will hot glue very easily because this non-porous material is really good for gluing. So after this, you would just stick it in the oven, and I would say a toaster oven works better than a regular oven because it is smaller and it is a little bit more controlled where the heat is going. You know, it's only going to get so hot, and it will get hot fast. So you can stick this in the oven, turn it up to 400, only a couple of minutes. You have to keep a close eye on it because you'll walk away and forget about it. Next thing you know, your oven's smoking and your little clay piece that you just made is dark brown, and you can't even tell what it is anymore. So you want to keep a close eye on it and only let it bake for a couple of minutes and take it right out. It'll feel a little rubbery when you first take it out, and you'll think, oh, I think it needs more time. I have to stick it back in the oven because it's not hard enough. But that's just how it feels when it's still warm. Once it cools and you come back to it, you'll feel that it is definitely solid, and it is just like one of these other pieces that you can hear how solid these are. They're almost like plastic. I also wanted to point out that some of my clay charms are shiny, like a shiny hard plastic, like this guy. And polymer clay is not shiny. Polymer clay is very matte. This is not glazed, it is not shiny, and it will look very dry, like the football. So if you want it to have a shiny, hard plastic look, you'd have to use some sort of a varnish or a glaze on it. My favorite one to use is the triple thick glaze made by DecoArt, and it is thick enough with one coat to give it that hard plastic look, but you could always let it dry, come back and do another coat, and it doesn't just give it a shiny look, it also protects it and seals all of your pieces on. So like this one, for instance, because it's not just a single solid piece, it has those little eyes stuck on there. I wouldn't want something happening to the eyes or for the eyes to fall off. So sealing it with some triple thick glaze or whatever varnish you choose to use will make sure that those are not going anywhere anytime soon.